Hello, I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Lesson 17, Rituals. Why the heck do we do them? Because if magic is as common sense and straightforward as I'm always talking about it being, right? It really is straightforward and very common sense. Then why all this, why all the hooty-dooty nonsense, right? Why all the spells and sigils, the costumes, the regalia, the almost cosplay-esque ritualistic tools, right? Books. Why all that noise around our magical practices? Well, I've talked a little bit about some of the simpler neophyte rituals already in earlier lessons, including practices on how to center yourself, how to ground yourself, how you can begin raising energy. And I've even mentioned using the Kabbalistic cross. That's a very specific ritual, right? A very specific type of ceremony for banishing. And there are tutorials for that ritual all over the place, including YouTube. And it really is one of the best, if not the best, ritual for anyone to have memorized. If you're going to memorize one to keep at your disposal, it should probably be that one. It should be the Kabbalistic cross. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced adept, it doesn't matter. You really can't beat it for immediate authority and magical influence over just about anything. But to get back to the topic, what is ritual, right? Why are we using it? Why are we doing it? And why do we use it specifically in magic? Because you see it everywhere. Why do we bother with circles and banishings and consecrations and ceremonies and costumes and symbols and candles and spells? Why are all of those trappings of ritual in magic if it's this straightforward common sense thing that you have access to? Because it's always there. The ritual aspects are always there in some form or another. Why? Whether you're practicing as a Wiccan, giving weekly or monthly devotional services or symbolic gifts to the divine feminine and masculine, or you might be a Thelemite practitioner attending temple, right? Replete with symbolic candles, statuary, tools, an altar, a high priest. Or you might be an Enochian magus, raising ancient energies daily, possibly, at dawn, saluting the sun in complete secrecy. The ritual attached to magical workings is always there. You're always going to see an aspect of ritualism. It's in the environments we choose for the great art. It's in our implements and ingredients. It's in our wordings and chants or our meditations. It's in our invocations or evocations. It's in the symbols we use. It's in the sigils we cast. It's in the ceremonial clothes we wear, the incenses we burn, the spell work that we're rhyming, the bells that we're ringing or staffs that we're knocking, right? The methods we employ with so much effort, again and again, with the utmost respect and vital empowerment as we focus, right? On the intended working that we're doing, on the magical working. Why? Why do we use these methods? Why are they so important? Because you'll see them everywhere. Magic is real, and its effects are real. So why can't we just learn the mastery and skip the method altogether, right? Is it a test of some kind? Is it a way to slow down those who might abuse the gifts that magic gives us? I hear that all the time from the newly initiated, right? That's the assumption being made. Or maybe it's to make us stronger, right? That we're training to prove our mental and energetic fitness because those in the know demand it of those who are beginning magical practices, right? Perhaps all the seemingly extra ritual stuff is just to distract outsiders. It's to distract people who don't have magical abilities yet. Maybe that's why we're doing it. I've heard it all. It's to protect the secrets of magical use, right? Or the assumption can be that it's to protect the power from the populace en masse. by making outsiders think we're all just a bunch of weirdos pantomiming gestures and intoning enchantments and costumes, right? That should keep them happily away from anything powerful. We just convince them it's ridiculous. These are very interesting guesses, but no. The ritual of magic in all of its many and varied forms is necessary. It's always been necessary. It's entirely necessary. And it's not for any of those interesting reasons that I've just listed. Although I admit some of them make a great deal of sense. And if they have certain side effects, great. The easy explanation of why ritual is fundamental in magic is this. Ritual is necessary because magic is accessed and manifested by connecting to the subconscious. That's it. That's why. That's the big how, why, if, what answer, right? But now you're wondering what that means, right? Who wouldn't? The sacrum ceremonia, sacred ceremony in Latin, that magic demands of its users, is how a practitioner of the craft makes an impression on the subconscious mind. And it's that impression which we enforce onto the subconscious with our focused intention or will by employing both active force and receptive form that then allows magic we want to have to be created functionally. To put it another way, you're using the greatest magical tool at your disposal, the mind, your mind, to reach into another plane, if you will, a mental plane, right? That's what the mind does. That's what the imagination is, which can reach other places. Your imagination can reach places you can't. You know that, right? It can reach other places than the physical matter of the kingdom here can. The mental can be used to access the astral, for instance, that we otherwise wouldn't have any access to. People approach this concept in different ways, but what you're doing is you're accessing that so that you can combine polar forces into what you intend and then draw those forces, now mixed, down into enforcement. And from that mental enforcement into manifestation here in the physical, within the physical kingdom. If you've studied the Kabbalistic tree of life at all, this is going to be symbolized by reaching into the spheres of Netzach, emotion, force, and Hod, structure, visualization, and mixing their powers together to join in Yesod, which is Sephiroth number 9. Yesod is, after all, the doorway, for lack of a better word, into creating anything magically here, where we are. From Sephiroth 9, the foundation, the intentioned magic mixed in equal parts by both pillars from both spheres, and then emblazoned intentionally by the will, can then move down from the Sephiroth of Yesod into Malkuth, the physical kingdom, like I said earlier. If you know the tree of life, this will all make a lot of sense and be very straightforward to you, and you'll understand how these spheres relate to specific areas of the body as well and to other things, right? And how conjurations and evocations necessitate bodily practices in tandem with ceremonial ritual practices to create the greatest effects. If you want to know more about all of that, you can study the Enochian correspondences to the Kabbalistic tree of life. I mentioned a book in one of my earlier lessons that does a great job of laying out a self-course to really get deeper into this if you want to. But for those who don't know about the Kabbalistic tree of life or the Sephiroth, you don't really need to think about it that way. You really can think about magical practices from whatever background you're coming from as being using energized, emotional, and structurally visualized focused will to bring to bear effects of manifestation on the physical plane. That is what you're doing. That is what magic does. Magic, Magick, right? We've been over this. So that's why the ritual. all the ritual, the burning of seals, the gestures, the ceremonial wardrobe, ritualistic tools, ritualistic scents, right? Incense, the scripts, the sets, right? Our temples, the things we say, the spell work or prayers, the chanting, the rhythmic intonations or bell ringing, pounding and knocking, the vigilance of directional facing alignments in correspondence with compass points, acknowledgement of specific steps of the method we use within the ritual, all of that. It's how we access and stamp onto the subconscious. That's what we're doing. It's how we imprint and impact the subconscious so that the intention can be taken up to then filter back down into manifestation in the way we want it to. Because otherwise we have no way of doing that. All of the trappings really are necessary, but they're necessary in this very straightforward way, right? That only seems anything but straightforward to the casual observer. It seems like a lot of complicated nonsense to get somewhere, but it's actually this very common sense, understandable way to get there and not nonsense at all. You have to put as much emotional power and mental power into your magic as you want to get out of it. Every practitioner knows this. And the easiest way to do that is to convince your mind, by any means necessary, to believe what you're doing. Now, there are certain means that you shouldn't do or use, right? And this is why we use ritual. Ritual is a means by which we can accomplish this. Because once you believe something, subconsciously, you manifest it. What you use comes back to you. What you genuinely, authentically, sincerely intend is what will return to its maker. What you give will return unto you, unto the maker. Everything's a circle, a return to itself. This is all throughout the occult. You see this repeated everywhere in the occult. You'll see it throughout the Hermetic principles, right? I've talked about that. It's how all magic functions. It's a circle. You get out what you put into it. You have to get your conscious mind out of the way, and then there's a conduit that is always going to close. You imprint the intention. After getting your subconscious out of the way, imprint your intention onto your subconscious mind, and then release it so that it can manifest, so that it can close that circuit. Ritual gives you a way of doing that. It's the means by which you can do that, the means by which you can control something you'd otherwise have no control over. Ritual creates a simple way for the subconscious to pick up on what you're doing while you're also forcefully, with as much energetic emotion as possible, willing what you're doing and willing your intention. Even with something as simple as the ritual of sigil creation, for instance. Let's use that as an example, which is one of the most common forms of spell work or spelling work. You see it a lot in chaos magic. It's very common today. You can see the ritual employed there within sigil spelling work as being necessary and the best means to gain access to the subconscious mind easily and quickly. If you could just think, I am wealthy, to yourself, and have it work that way without ritual, without any magical intention, without employing any tool, then everybody would be walking around happily thinking that and then having it be reality. And that would be great. But you can think I am wealthy all you want, and it doesn't mean you're going to suddenly be wealthy, right? People try this and it doesn't work. I mean, maybe if you repeat it to yourself 1,000 times a day for 5 years or something like that, because at that point, it's a ritual in itself. So it really is just doing the same thing. And that's going to have an impact on the subconscious mind. If you're doing that and creating that ritual and repeating it that much for that long, right? Then you're going to create a magical, energetic conduit in the exact same way. But short of that, faster and simpler, even though it seems unnecessarily complicated, is you sitting down, drawing out a sigil of I am wealthy as an intention, creating a vivid state of self-hypnosis induced by visualization of your desired outcome. And then experiencing, while you look at that ritualistic tool, the sigil that you've now drawn, experiencing all of the emotions you will experience later when it comes into fulfillment, as if they were happening to your mind and body in real time as you're charging the sigil. Then having, by both force and form, visualization and hyper emotive state, having energetically transferred the intention of the essence of your very will onto that sigil, you set it and forget it, allowing it to enter into the invisible, quote unquote, is one way to think of it, subconscious plane, right? And later you burn it or tear it up or bury it, however you release your sigil. You destroy it to release it back into the physical manifestation plane without ever having to consciously think about it or remember even what it was, where it will then manifest every single time, coming back through Yesod and into the physical plane of Malkuth. How well and how quickly will depend on the strength of your magic. That is how well you created the form and then force charge the sigil, right? Form and force. The equal mixing of both spheres, the equal mixing of two parts. You have the masculine and the passive feminine, the energetic force of the masculine, right? And the visualized feminine. But that's just a matter of practice, how well you can do that within something like the example of sigil casting. So it seems complicated, even this simple sigil ritual, right? It seems complicated that you're having to go through all these things, all these steps, this method, all that ritual, right? But it's actually a lot less complicated and much faster and simpler to use that form of ritualistic magic than it is to go around repeating for the next 5 years 1,000 times a day out loud to yourself that you're wealthy and create a ritual that way, right? That's much more difficult. That's much more complicated in reality. They're different methods with the same effects. All the other rituals and advanced ceremonies for other types of magical workings to create and control desired effects, they're the same thing, just on differing or higher scales. Complicated ritual is just simplest. That's why ritual. Until next time.